The Tiegreens, without a doubt, have had a life full of adventure. Just with Joel being the father who loved being outdoors, loved wheels, loved trying new things. We just have so many stories that as a family, we love to retell. We call them the Tiegreen adventures. There is one Tiegreen adventure that has topped them all for now, and that is definitely my trip from Turkey to America with the 5 kids to be reunited with Joel. The background story to that was James was born on February 8th, 2020. About 3 weeks later, we found out that Joel was diagnosed with cancer. On top of that, the coronavirus was just unveiling itself to the world. So I just remember being so glad I had finished Nancy Wilson's book, Learning Contentment, because a deep satisfaction with the present will of God was something that God was really working into me. I remember I had started reading that book thinking I was about to have my 5th baby overseas. I just needed to kind of envision myself staying at home with the baby and not getting to go out as much. And little did I know I was about to take this epic journey. And so Joel made it to America, and we had to stay in Turkey waiting for James's passport. Nobody knew when it would arrive. We had turned in all the paperwork. We had talked to the embassies. I was on the phone with senators and just anybody who we thought could help let us know when we could get this passport or when it was going to arrive, because the dilemma was on the news every day, coronavirus was just showing something else with the policies of traveling and being allowed to leave on open flights or not. And so there was just this tension of, I need to get back to my husband. I can't be stuck here with him having cancer and us in this pandemic here. And I remember even writing a rough draft to President Trump, just explaining our situation, hoping that somehow somebody would help us. So finally, after waiting on our balcony with the kids day after day, I remember the Turkish UPS truck rolling up to our tall cement fence with barbed wire on the top, and I could just see the top of it, but it was brown and it looked kind of American, and we just ran. We flocked to that fence and we opened the gate, and there was the package that so many people had been praying for and wanting updates on. And so I remember I kind of just blurted out to him in Turkish, "Oh, we're so grateful that you came. So many people have been praying for you. This paperwork is so important. It's going to help us get back to our family." And so we grabbed the paperwork and gave him a Turkish Bible, and I made the kids stand with him and get a quick picture. I remember him just walking back to his truck, kind of confused and like, what just happened? So we had the passport, and now it was time to get an action plan. We already had all our bags packed, but I was just kind of overwhelmed with the idea of how do I carry the baby car seat and push this little red broken stroller and have all of the kids with all the paperwork and not lose anything, but most of all, not touch anything. So that was what made it seem impossible. So I had like alcohol sprays hidden in each of my pockets and Clorox wipes because we didn't want to take on any germs to possibly transfer to Joel when we got back. Or we didn't want to have the situation where we felt like we had to be quarantined from him when we were just supposed to be enjoying our reunion. So I remember standing on the balcony one last time, and I was getting a phone call from Joel. I knew it was my last conversation I was going to get to have with him before starting the travel, and not really getting to communicate a whole lot besides text messages and just updates. And so I was talking to him, and I knew his advice was going to be great. It was going to be so Joel-like. And it really was. He started off by saying, "Emily, I know this is a hard situation. It's going to be so hard. I know you can do it. There's 100 plus, maybe 1,000 people praying for you. But I do want to just let you know that you could be right now a Syrian woman fleeing from ISIS, trying to dodge bullets and landmines, getting ready to hop into the back of a dark semi with your 5 kids, not knowing when you're going to get to where you're going or if you'll get there. And I just took that Emily breath in and I let it hit me, and I just thought, he is so right. He is my husband, and he is trained to know how his wife functions and what she needs to hear in a situation like this. And so I just took that advice and I ran with it, because reality was, he was so right. I was getting ready to travel on a plane that had trained pilots. I was getting ready to get to buckle my kids into a plane that had seat belts, take them to the bathroom whenever they need it, buy them food if they needed it. I would be able to read the signs. It really was a safe journey, just an unknown journey, and a journey that was going to be just strenuous. So David pulled up, our teammate, to pick us up, and we loaded into the car. We made it to the airport, and at check-in, I remember him helping us get our baggage checked in, and there was this moment where he was kind of handing over the trip to Owen as the man of the trip, and Owen kind of confidently nudged him out of the way of the luggage cart and was like, "I got this, Uncle David." And he turns the luggage cart just a little bit, and all of our bags like just fall off the cart onto the ground, and everybody in the airport just like looks at us like, "What are you guys trying to do with all of this luggage and all these kids? And don't you know that everybody's worried about germs right now? You shouldn't be traveling." I don't know, it just felt like everybody was like, "What is going on?" So David left us and walked away, and trusting us to the Lord. And we had one last bathroom break that we were going to be able to do before boarding the plane. So at this point, I was super paranoid about germs still. And I was like, "Okay, I'll help you wash your hands after you go to the bathroom." And then I hear one of the kids, one of the younger ones, just scream, "Ah!" and start crying. And I was like, "What's the matter?" And I hear, "Batman!" And our friends, our teammates, had come over before and had given the kids like little airplane toys, you call them. And one of them was Batman. And I knew how important Batman was to this kid on that trip. And so I just knew that all strivings to be germ-free in that moment were in vain. I got Batman out, washed him off, and we got to board our first plane. A few hours later, we landed in one of the biggest international airports in the Middle East. And so you just hear languages that you have no idea what they are. You see people from all different countries and just feel this intenseness at this time, because everybody was trying to get back to their country or wherever they wanted to be for the virus and when flights closed down. So you saw people in shields, and you heard all these extra just announcements about the virus. And so we tried to weave our way and make it to just an airport hotel that we were going to be able to stay at for about 5 hours before starting our trek out the next day. So we got a little bit of rest, gathered up the kids, went to check in, and they said, "There's something the matter with your tickets, and you're going to have to go all the way back to the ticket counter and cancel them." And I was just like, I just kind of held my hands and looked at them like, "How? I don't have enough time. Can't you just let me through?" And they said, "Okay, no." And they kind of helped us quickly walk with all of our luggage to the ticket counter and rearrange the tickets so that we were able to get through. The next thing on the list was getting through passport control. And I don't care how even key of a person you are, when you walk up and you're standing in front of passport control, your heart just starts beating faster naturally, because you know that that person has the power to let you through or give you a hard time or make you stop. And so luckily there wasn't a line, but there was just about 30 weaves of string that we had to make it in and out of with all the kids and all of our extra stuff. And that was special. But we get there, and I just hand the passport control man all of our paperwork. And he looks at me like, "What is this pile of stuff?" Because normally, you hand it one at one, and I just couldn't. So I handed it to him, and so he started checking them, and he gets to James, and he looks at James, and he just said, "Kimling Nerede," which, where is his Turkish ID? And I just said, "He's a baby. And then he says, Babasin Day, like, where is his father? And I'm just like, I didn't know exactly how to answer that. So I just, I said, he's in America. We're trying to get to him. Please let us through. And so there was just this moment of not knowing exactly how he was going to respond. So he just had us go to a more secure section, and they checked out the paperwork a little bit further, checked in on the emergency passport that we had received, and luckily finally just sent us through. And so definitely a bit of relief going from domestic to international, and crossing that boundary. Then we loaded the plane for the 13-hour flight, and I was feeling a lot better about the trip. And so I had the kids, the older three, sit in the middle, and I was sitting in the other three sections with Abraham and the baby. And we were about to take off. The stewardess were making their last check through, and I see a stewardess come over and start talking to the kids, and I overhear saying, this is impossible. You have to have another adult with you. Like, where are your parents? Where are your guardians? And I came over there and I just said, these are my kids. Is there something that's a matter? And she just said, there has to be another adult with them. And I just said, I am their only guardian right now traveling with them. You guys sold us the tickets. I'm really sorry if there was some confusion. And finally, after another stewardess came over and talked, they were able to really be helpful for the rest of the trip. So those 13 hours passed, as anybody can imagine, just lots of crying, lots of "are we there yet?" A million bathroom breaks, but finally we landed. And I just remember there was something about taking off that was relieving. Like, most people would think, like, taking off would be the stressful part because you're up in the air and you can't get down. And that was kind of the point to me. Like, once we got up, we couldn't turn back. And so just the takeoff on that plane was really, really relieving. And then, of course, the land into America, into everything familiar, into just the safety of your own citizenship country. And so we had one more flight to take, but we saw Chick-fil-A. Had to stop, and so kids got their Chick-fil-A breakfast, and I went to nurse the baby, nursed James, came back to just a pile of biscuit crumbs on the airport floor, and just had no strength or ability to clean it up. And I felt so bad, but at that moment I was just like, Lord, help the person that has to clean up after us. Help that person, bless them for cleaning up our mess. We're going to see Joel. And so we were on our way to Little Rock, and it just had worked out perfectly because Joel had a cancer specialist appointment in Little Rock. It was one of the only times that he had to actually go and physically be there, and we worked it out so that he was able to be there to pick us up. And so I knew that once we boarded and landed, it was Joel, that we were going to get to see Dad. And so we landed, and I mean, no strength left, just pure exhaustion. We get to the baggage claim. I'm able to pull the luggage off just randomly in different places, just looked completely scattered, and the kids just collapse on top of a suitcase. And I was on the ground just waiting for Joel. I knew I wasn't his beautiful bride at that moment that he had married, but I was so excited and ready to see him and for us to be together again as a family.
To you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Evo, happy birthday to you. Blow him out, buddy. Woo!
Good job, Evo.
All right.
Are they
Yeah.
hot, Daddy?
Woohoo!
Are they steaming hot?
Abraham, how old are you?
Sweet.
How old are you?
I don't know. No, sweet.
Say 3, buddy. This many.
This
How many pieces of cake do you have?
sweet. Like this much.
Here you go.
I'm so excited to get to share that story because it's a fun memory, but it's also such a picture of what our life looks like now without Joel. Just the journey that we would have never chosen, all of the little checkpoint things that we had to do along the way. I think about the constant kind of jet lag feeling, not really knowing what day it is. That's starting to get better now, but just in those first few months, really trying to wade through those sleepless nights and learning all the new things that I needed to do as a single mom. Also, like just thinking about passport control and the question of, you know, where is your father? And the things that the kids have to work through in answering those questions that people may have, or the stewardess coming over and looking at our situation and saying, this is impossible, just really correlates right now to how some people look at our situation. But I also think it's so neat because it's such a picture of how God provides and how there really is no fear in my mind of if we're going to get through this. He has proved himself faithful over and over again. I just have countless stories of neat ways that he has loved on our family. The first family devotional book that we have read as a family that Joel led us through was Pilgrims Progress. When we got back to America and found out that Joel was terminally ill, he bought the Pilgrim's Progress Part 2. And the story is Christiana following her husband, taking her kids, her 4 boys. And it's just such a neat picture of how there's hope in our situation, how the mission is still the same. The mission is to lead the kids to Christ. The mission is to keep our hand to the plow, knowing that one day we will hopefully see the King and be reunited with Joel. So it's so neat to look at that story. But in that story too, there's the character of Mercy. And Mercy is Christiana's family's help. She hears about how Christiana is going on this journey, and she's curious, and she ends up becoming converted and following along on the journey too. But in that story, when I was reading it out loud with the kids in Joel's last few months, I just asked myself, who's going to be Mercy in our life? What's that going to look like? And not really having an answer and not doubting that God was going to provide it, but it was just a question. And the ways that has played out for us over the past months are hands down the church, the body of Christ. The body of Christ has been our mercy in the neatest ways. After Joel's last breath, a few minutes later, I got a text message from one of the elders' wives, and she said, you know, Emily, can I just come be with you? Can I bring you a coffee? Can I sit with you? And she had no idea. Nobody had any idea at that point that Joel was gone. And I didn't have the capacity to figure out how I was going to get home to my kids. But the Lord worked out exactly what he knew I needed, the exact people to come pick me up in that moment. And it was just hands down, undeniably, God's kindness to me and my very first picture of his mercy. Just 2 elders' wives walking into the room, no words, but able to be by my side, able to help me gather all my husband's stuff, all the things that I needed to take home, and just transport me to my home with hymns playing loud and me trying to figure out how to update everybody else. Beautiful picture, and that has happened time and time again. I think about the very first Turkish girl that I got to witness be baptized. It was the pastor's daughter of the church that we were serving at. Along the way, she gets to America, and she's living in America as a 19-year-old girl, and she gets to spend 2 months living with us and helping my family and the kids, just pouring into them and letting them be crazy and wild, and her just loving them, knowing that they had just lost their father. a picture of God's mercy. I think about some of our dearest friends that moved a house down from us in the last months and have been able to be there with us so that we can still have family worships. I think about all of the people in our church just loving and pouring into our lives. I think about all of the supporting churches that frequently call, check in on us, let us know they haven't forgotten us. There is no way we could have planned these things. I remember last conversations with Joel and him saying, Emily, if there was ever somebody that God has prepared for this kind of life, look around you. You can't deny it. You are going to be taken care of by God's people. And it's so true. It's undeniable.